Hi everybody. So this video that I'm making today is a follow-up video to the podcast that Kathleen and I made on August 30th, where we talked about the episode of Gilmore Girls where Paris has her breakdown on C-SPAN about not getting into Harvard. So I wanted to just share a little bit of further insight on that episode that I have based on a video I watched. I recently discovered a channel on YouTube where this therapist goes in and analyzes episodes of Friends and Gilmore Girls from the perspective of a therapist and just makes comments on the mannerisms of the characters. Let me just get to my notes that I wrote down this morning. Where did they go? Okay, here we go. Okay, so I disagree. So in this episode, as we start, this episode is about where Paris and Rory get picked by Headmaster Charleston to be on C-SPAN to talk about the bicentennial anniversary of Chilton Academy. So they have to get together to write a speech. So Paris shows up at Rory's house completely uninvited because they were originally going to discuss writing a speech over the phone, but instead she comes over to the house to work on a speech. Again, as I just said, uninvited. So I mentioned in my Disability Pride Month video that I think Paris could be neurodivergent, and this is an example of why I think like that, because as somebody who is neurodivergent, I have trouble with social cues and knowing when to appropriately enter conversations and stuff like that. And in this situation, Paris completely steamrolls Rory. She shows up at her house uninvited. This is not the first time she has done this. She has done this in a few other episodes. Second, she completely dominates the conversation and doesn't let Rory, get her opinion in edgewise. Paris comes over to Rory's house with the pretext of working on her speech, but she ends up confessing to Rory that she has sex with Jamie for the first time, and they have the discussion about that. And another thing that I thought was rude about this conversation is that she just asks Rory right up front if she had sex with Dean and Jess yet. And if I were Rory, I would have been really uncomfortable about answering those questions because they're very personal. And I understand that she was trying to compare her situation to Rory's, but maybe in that kind of situation, you don't compare yourself to your friends, because people have sex at different times, and Rory talks to Paris about the fact that she's not at that point in her relationship with Jess yet where she's ready to have sex, and she was never at that point with Dean either. And as you know, a couple of episodes later at the house party that Lane's band is at, Jess actually sexually assaults Rory. I'm going to talk about that I'm going to talk about that episode next week. So, Lorelai comes home to bring dinner home for Rory, and she overhears Paris's conversation with Rory, and she whispers to herself under her breath, "I have the good child." At that time, Rory is the good child, but in later episodes, she's the not-so-good child. And I will be talking about those episodes at a later date because I have not seen them yet. But when I review those episodes, I will talk about how Rory is no longer the good kid anymore. So the next day is the day of the speech for the bicentennial, which is being recorded on national television for C-SPAN. Paris shows up late, and her hair is a mess. She's not dressed properly for the presentation. She's not at all ready to give the speech. So Rory opens up the speech. Thank God she opened up the speech because, Paris, she looked bad. She did not look like she was even prepared for this at all. Her lack of preparation shows because her hair was not combed. She showed up in a sweater and sweatpants. So Rory starts off the speech, what she prepared, and then Paris talks about how she spent all of her 4 years at Chilton preparing for this moment of getting into Harvard and being the perfect model student and doing everything she was asked. And then she admits to the world that she had sex with Jamie and did not get into Harvard. Should she have spoken so blatantly about her sex life on national TV? No. But let me just say, Paris and Rory equally deserve to get into Harvard because they were both intelligent and smart. They were both smart and good students and worked hard in their own rights to get to where they deserve to be. Where Paris's downfall happened was letting her relationship with Jamie distract her and suck up all her time, because if she hadn't been so hyper-focused on her relationship with Jamie, she probably would have gotten where she wanted to be. The biggest mistake she made was a few episodes prior to this one, where her and Rory are being interviewed by a college interviewer, and she, from Harvard, it's like for some panel for students who are prospective students. I think they were on a tour. I don't know if the people from Harvard came to Chilton for a college talk or if they were on a tour or something, but regardless, Rory and Paris were talking about how they wanted to get into Harvard and such, and they were having they were doing some kind of like joint interview thing, which was a little weird, but Paris went on this tirade about population control that had really nothing to do with her college interview. And then when the interviewer tried to redirect her focus to actually answer the questions about getting into Harvard, she yelled at him and said, "I'm not done talking yet." So that was definitely her downfall. When Paris has her meltdown after the speech, where Rory is comforting her, Liza Wheel, the actress who played Paris, I thought she was fantastic. She's fantastic in her portrayal of Paris. And I think she played the role of a stressed out high school student who's trying to get into college very well. I never had any experiences like this where I spoke on national TV for my school's bicentennial because I didn't go to a rich private high school. I went to a public high school in New Hampshire called Sauhegan, where I graduated from in 2004. And let me just say, the reason why the characters in Gilmore Girls are so relatable to me is because they were the same age as me when I was in high school. Friends and Gilmore Girls were on concurrently during 2000 to 2004. Seasons 8 through 10 for Friends and 1 to 3 for Gilmore Girls were on at the same time. And I think they were probably filmed at the same place because I have seen Instagram picture compilations where the characters wear the same costume pieces. Like in one episode of Friends, Monica is wearing the same green shirt that Rory wears in an episode, or maybe it was Rory, maybe it was Lorelai. I don't remember. And then I think there was another situation where there was one episode where Lorelai was wearing the same shirt as Rachel, but I don't remember. But Jonathan, the guy who runs the Mended Light channel, he said something really interesting in his video that I agree with. He said that he thinks that Paris is related to Ross from Friends because they are both neurotic. And I talked about this before when I have compared the characters of Gilmore Girls and Friends in previous character analysis videos that I have made in the past couple of months. Paris says to Rory after they give the speech that generations of Gellers have gone to Harvard, and she has felt like she has let her family down by not getting to Harvard, and that's why she's so upset about how she has screwed up. I would say that Paris's neuroses in this episode about having sex with Jamie is similar to Ross's breakdown that he has in the one with Ross's sandwich, where he freaks out about his coworker eating his Thanksgiving Day leftover sandwich. But along to the point that Paris made about generations of Gellers going to Harvard. So, Gilmore Girls is set during the 2000s. Friends was set in the early 90s. So, the flashback episodes where it's Thanksgiving take place when Monica and Rachel are in their senior year of high school, and Ross and Chandler are in college. I think that Ross and Chandler are probably 2 or 3 years older than Monica and Rachel. So, if they were in college in 1987, that means Monica and Rachel were 2 or 3 years behind them. So they would have gone to college in the early 90s. So I think that Ross and Rachel and Monica and Chandler probably graduated from college around... Okay. So Rachel, as I just said, Ross and Chandler are probably 2 or 3 years older than Monica and Rachel. That would put Chandler and Ross in their sophomore year of college when Monica and Rachel are seniors in high school. The Thanksgiving flashback episode is set in 1987. So, think about this for a second. 1987 plus 3 is 1989. So, that was when Ross and Chandler graduated from college. And then I would imagine they went to grad school after that, because when we are at the beginning of Friends, Ross he works at the Museum of Natural History in New York City in a dinosaur exhibit, and he is a I think he's a master of paleontology. So after he went to college and had his band with Chandler, Went Way No Way, I would think he went to graduate school to maybe study natural history or something related to dinosaurs and paleontology, and that's how he got the museum job. When we meet Chandler in season 1 of Friends, he is a statistical analysis and data reconfiguration specialist, and he has a big fancy office in a building where he has a view of the city. Monica is a chef at a restaurant, and she works up. She's interested in cooking because she was a stress eater, because she was always in competition with Ross, because in the Thanksgiving episodes, she's overweight, and then she loses all the weight to try to impress Chandler, because she's obviously in love with him from the very, very beginning, but doesn't want to admit it right away. So, because in one Thanksgiving episode, Monica is overweight, and then the next year, which is probably 1988, I think, because the first Thanksgiving flashback episode was 1987. So by then, Monica is she's thin, and she's wearing a nice, pretty, slimming black dress. So obviously, as I've mentioned before, when I've talked about these episodes where Monica is overweight, Courtney Cox is obviously wearing a fat suit in those episodes. And then in the other Thanksgiving episode, she's obviously wearing a more body-conscious dress that fits her actual real body that's not in a fat suit. So my thought is that, where was I? I was talking about Monica. So Monica is a chef. She works at various restaurants and has various newspapers as a food critic. And by the end of the series, she is working at a fancy restaurant as a chef, and by this point, Chandler is not at the fancy office anymore. He's working as a junior copywriter at an advertising company. And then they move to the suburbs to start their family when they adopt their twins with Erica at the finale. And I don't know what kind of job Monica gets after she moves out of the city, or if she continues to commute to work at the restaurant, Alessandro's. I would assume that she keeps her job at Alessandro's after the finale, and continues to work there. But back to the conversation, I got off on a distracting tangent. So I was talking about where I think Monica and Ross went to college, because Paris said that she's feeling like she's letting generations of Gellers down by going to Harvard. So the Gellers and the Greens are really rich. Judy and Jack and Sandra and Leonard play tennis at the same country club on Montauk Beach. And you would estimate by those purposes that Ross and Monica's high school was really fancy. Chandler went to an all-boys Catholic school, I think. He says that in the episode where Brad Pitt guest stars and comes to Thanksgiving dinner, and they talk about Ross and Will, who is played by Brad Pitt, talk about the I Hate Rachel Green Club and how they started a rumor that Rachel was a hermaphrodite cheerleader. So, Monica, Ross, and Rachel all went to the same high school. I think that given how rich they were, they probably went to Harvard for college or another Ivy League school like Columbia or Yale, like Rory and Paris go to, or I can't think of any other potential Ivy League schools they could have gone to. But I think that they either went to an Ivy League school or started off at like a community college near where they went to high school and then transferred to the Ivy League college like Yale or Harvard or Columbia to get their degrees and go to grad school. And as far as Chandler goes, I don't know what he majored in college to get the job in data statistics and data analysis and statistical reconfiguration. I always thought it was either math or finance or business. So, if you guys have any theories below about where Monica, Ross, Rachel, and Chandler went to college, and if Paris could in fact possibly be related to Ross and Monica somehow, and Ross and Monica are in the earlier generation that went to Harvard, please leave a comment below. Thank you. Have a good night.